Coming up on Locked On Dodgers, the first weekend of spring training games is in the books. We have a lot to talk about from those games, plus the news that Shohei Ohtani and Yoshinobu Yamamoto will both be making their Dodger spring debuts this coming week. That's something exciting to look forward to, and some interesting words from Clayton Kershaw about his future in Major League Baseball. We're going to get into all of that, so let's get Locked On Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Dodger fans, this is Locked On Dodgers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks to our everydayers for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. Remember, this show is free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube simply by searching for Locked On Dodgers. Please subscribe wherever you're watching or listening right now. If this is your first time with us, my name is Jeff Snyder. My normal co-host is Vince Samperio, although it's just me today. Vince and I are both lifelong Dodger fans, just like a lot of you. We've also both spent time covering the Dodgers in the press box and the locker room, so we're not quite insiders, but we bring you the smart fans perspective on our boys in blue every weekday morning. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers, join today and you'll get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. And with all that said, thank you all for being here with us today. I am excited to be back with you. I wasn't with you for Friday's episode. I was down in southern Utah with my son for his first baseball tournament of the year. I had a good time. He played really well, pitched a complete game shutout, and I only almost got ejected by the umpire. And I did apologize to the umpire after. He overheard me saying something to my son that he got offended by. And yeah, I wasn't talking to him, so he probably should have had a thicker skin, but I'm not that kind of dad. So I did apologize to him. And I didn't get ejected. So that was good. And he was wrong. So, all in all, not a bad weekend. But now I'm back. And because I was watching my son, my Dodger watching was a little bit more sporadic. I still got to catch most of all the games, but some of it was done on my phone. So maybe not as big screen and comfortable as I sometimes am watching the Dodgers, but still a fun weekend for the Dodgers. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the things that happened in spring training games, and then we'll dig into more newsy stuff in the next couple segments, including the big news about Ohtani and Yamamoto making their debuts. One other item of housekeeping really quick before we get started. If you are listening to this on the podcast, you probably noticed it wasn't available at the usual time. I did try to warn you last week. We switched audio hosting providers, and just in the process of getting everything transferred over, we knew there was going to be a little bit of downtime. And so whereas our episodes are usually up late the night before, today's wasn't available for you till about 9 a.m. Pacific. Hopefully it's available for you at 9 a.m. Pacific. But this is a one-time thing, so nothing to worry about. It was just this transfer. You kind of have to have a down period so you can get everything transferred from the old provider to the new provider. So that's all it was. And like I said, shouldn't happen again, at least not for a long time. So anyway, with that said, let's talk about spring training this weekend. A few takeaways, and everybody's going to have different takeaways. One of the great things about spring training is so many different guys are getting playing time. We saw Dalton Rushing. I'm not going to talk about Dalton Rushing other than what I'm saying right now. But maybe Dalton Rushing was the main takeaway for you. There's something different for everybody. I did caution everybody during Thursday's game when the Dodgers blew out the Padres to remember that it is spring training. There's no real takeaways as far as performance goes. And I joked, I said, the only thing we really learned today is that Gavin Stone is definitely better than Joe Musgrove. That was a joke. And I think most of the people on Twitter recognized that it was a joke. So we're not going to look too much at results. The Dodgers they're now 3-0-1, I believe. They tied with the Angels 7-7 on Saturday. And man, all these days run together. And they've won the other 3 games. They beat the A's 4-2 on Sunday. Saturday's game against the Angels was one of the big takeaways, which was Tyler Glasnow's Dodgers debut. It didn't go great. He struggled a little bit. Again, we're not really worried about results and ultimately spring training. You never really know what's the guy working on? Is he still working into shape? And so definitely not going to get concerned about one poor outing for Glasnow. The whole point of being a starting pitcher in spring training is getting built up. And so he threw the pitches he needed to. And, obviously if he has 3 or 4 bad outings in a row, then maybe we start getting concerned. But one bad outing, we're not going to get concerned. On the flip side, we're going to try not to get too excited about really good outings from the young guys, but Landon Knack is going to try to make that hard for us. He pitched 2 innings, faced 6 batters, retired all 6 batters, struck out 4 of them in his game on, I think that was on Friday. Friday. Which I can remember because I was in the parking lot of Dick's Sporting Goods while buying my son some new baseball pants, because apparently he's grown 2.5 inches since last fall when he last wore his baseball uniform. But that was great outing by Landon Knack. And again, trying not to get too excited about it, but it kind of shows a little bit of what we're excited about Landon Knack. And a lot of these young guys, we saw it with Gavin Stone in Thursday's game. There's some really good stuff there. Even Kyle Hurt, who maybe wasn't as flashy and dramatic on Sunday, but he pitched well too. And so, I'm excited to see River Ryan. That's the one I'm looking forward to next. But a lot of fun for Landon Knack, and definitely, as far as he's concerned, obviously, even though we're not going to take a lot of stock in the results, you'd rather have him pitch really well than really poorly. And I'm sure he'd rather have that. And so for him, obviously a confidence builder, all those things. So excited for Landon Knack, just like I was excited for Gavin Stone. Glasnow, he's a veteran. He knows the story, so he'll get there. Another takeaway, or another interesting one, was Andy Pages. Andy Pages played in 2 games. He went 2 for 5. He looked really good at times. Obviously, he drove in 3 runs, a double, and was it a double and a single? Yeah, a double and a single. So he's batting .400 on the spring. Of course, the 3 at bats that he didn't get a hit, he struck out, and that's kind of the Andy Pages story. He is a good hitter who strikes out a whole lot, and obviously he's not going to strike out. His BABIP won't remain 1,000. But he's not going to strike out every time he doesn't get a hit. And he's not going to get a hit every time he doesn't strike out. But, it was kind of a microcosm of the Andy Pages experiment. As we talked about last week, we are interested to see if Pages and or Miguel Vargas can make a push for that roster spot that's currently being held by Manuel Margot. And Pages, definitely, he doesn't necessarily seem, he did get hit by a pitch too, by the way. So he came up to bat 6 times, 5 at bats. He doesn't really seem overmatched, despite the strikeouts. He's young, and there's going to be those strikeouts, but he seems confident at the plate, and that's good. So just, it is the first weekend, but it's kind of stuff to think about looking at over the next couple weeks. It's kind of interesting that the Dodgers do have this abbreviated spring training. They really only have like 2.5 weeks of spring training left before they head to Korea. But all of these guys are people to watch. And one of the interesting things, kind of recognizing the folly in using the eye test, is, for me, Travis Swaggerty looked really good. I saw him bat twice this weekend, at least that I was paying attention. Like I said, I was watching my son play, so I wasn't paying close attention. But I remember seeing Travis Swaggerty bat twice, and he went 2 for 2. And so I'm like, I wonder how he did the rest of the time. Oh, he went 0 for 6, the other 6 at bats that I didn't see, or that I don't remember seeing. So, but Swaggerty was a top prospect of the Pirates, and there's potential there. I'm excited to see if Swaggerty can become something. But if I was just going on my eye test, I'd think, man, that guy's pushing for a starting job. But he went 0 for 6 when I wasn't eye testing. So keep that in mind too. Just what you see isn't always the full story, and that's part of the hard thing about being a prospect guy. When people are making these prospects, that's one of the reasons they differ so much, is because you can only see a guy so many times. And now with so much minor league stuff being televised and or at least on the internet, scouts can see players more, but there's that personal bias involved. And so my personal bias would have had me rating Travis Swaggerty a lot higher, except for the fact that I recognized that and accounted for it and looked to see how he did the other at bats. So anyway, keep that in mind. We're going to come back in a minute. We're going to talk about the $1 billion acquisitions for the Dodgers this offseason, Shohei Ohtani and Yoshinobu Yamamoto. They will both be debuting for the Dodgers this week in their spring training debuts. So we'll talk about that. So thanks for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen, and please keep it Locked On Dodgers. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. So if you have a hunch, something you're pretty sure is going to be right, bet $5 on it, and boom, you win that bet. You get $150 in bonus bets that you can then use anywhere on FanDuel. Maybe a riskier bet where you don't want to risk your own money. Use those bonus bucks, and if you hit big, maybe you add on to that. So you can bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same game parlays, exclusive props, and more. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Hey, I'm back. I want to thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning, especially our everydayers. If you're not an everydayer, it's easy to become one. Just watch or listen every weekday morning. If you are an everydayer, thank you. You're our favorite. You can also become a Locked On Dodgers insider by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. It's a text message based system where you get text blasts from us. You can text back and forth one-on-one conversations with us. It's a lot of fun. We're having a lot of fun over there. It's just a few bucks a month. There's a free 14-day trial. So it's a great way to support the podcast and interact with us one-on-one outside the podcast. So check that out at joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. Also check out Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles, the two 24/7 streaming channels from on YouTube from the Locked On Podcast Network, which is your team every day. Locked On Sports Today covers the whole gamut of sports, whereas Locked On Sports Los Angeles focuses specifically on, you guessed it, Los Angeles sports. And so we are on Locked On Sports Los Angeles every day, and we are on Locked On Sports Today somewhat regularly because of the big news about the Dodgers offseason. Shohei Ohtani is obviously the biggest name in the sport. Yoshinobu Yamamoto was the top free agent. The Dodgers signed both of them, the top free agent besides Ohtani. Dodgers signed both of them, and so we are on that show a lot. And speaking of those two guys, they will both be making their spring debuts for the Dodgers in the coming days. Earlier on Sunday, Dave Roberts said midweek for both of them, and then he got a little bit more specific after Sunday's game, said that Shohei Ohtani will debut for the Dodgers on Tuesday at Camelback Ranch against the White Sox. That game is at 12:05 Pacific time and should be a blast. I can't wait to see Shohei Ohtani playing in a baseball game in Dodger blue. Again, it's not a real game, but it's a spring training game, which is a step up from live BP, which is a step up from regular BP. So we will take every step up we can get. And in just a few weeks, we will see him in a game that actually matters. But I can't wait to see him in this first game on Tuesday against the White Sox. And then Yamamoto, we haven't heard a specific day. The Dodgers don't play. We do know that Ryan Yarbrough is scheduled to start on Monday, and Bobby Miller's scheduled to start on Tuesday. So it's unlikely that Yamamoto would debut in either of those. I assume he will be starting the game that he debuts in. And the Dodgers don't play at home again at Camelback until Friday. They play against the Rangers on Wednesday and against the Reds on Thursday. Both of those ballparks are a little bit far out. The Reds, I believe, are out in Goodyear, which is kind of although from Camelback, it's probably farther to Mesa. Goodyear is like the most, where in the world am I going kind of ballpark there of the Arizona spring training ones, just kind of out in the middle of nowhere. And then I believe, unless things have changed, I know when I went to a Rangers game in 2015, they were in Surprise, which is kind of the other direction. So the Goodyear is southwest and Surprise is northwest, and then Mesa is far east, and everything else is kind of in between there. And so there's no real close stadiums on Wednesday or Thursday, but it's not like there's anything super far. One of the nice things about Arizona over Florida for spring training is all the ballparks. Like, I think it's not more than an hour and 15 minutes probably from one end of the league to the other. So no major bus rides. I would guess from Camelback to surprise for the Rangers would be maybe 40 minutes, and from Camelback to Goodyear's, maybe that same ballpark, probably both of them even less than that. And so it not too bad, either one of those. I would guess that Yamamoto will start one of those two games. Matthew Moreno had tweeted out that if he started on Tuesday, then that would line up for him to make a couple more starts and then be in line to start in Korea. That's not going to happen. They announced Bobby Miller, and so they could still have Yamamoto pitch that game too, so it would be at home, but I doubt they would do that. But, stranger things happen, but I guess he's going to start. And so, and nothing really goes perfectly on these schedules in spring training anyway, so it's not like being lined up for this really means that much. You can always adjust things by a day or two either direction with bullpens and everything. So the key is to get him built up. Dave Roberts did say that Yamamoto and Glasnow are likely to be the two starters in Korea, which is what we expected. We don't know which order, and some of that will depend on their spring workload buildup and everything. They will probably have more relief pitchers on the roster in Korea because they won't be expecting 6 innings from either of those guys. We may only be built up to 4 innings by then, but we'll see. But we know for sure when Ohtani's debuting, and we can guess either Wednesday or Thursday for Yamamoto. Both very, very exciting. I'm excited to see. I've seen Shohei Ohtani play a ton. Even before he signed with the Dodgers, he was one of my favorite players in baseball. And so while I don't care about the Angels one way or the other, I do care about Shohei Ohtani. So I've watched a lot of Angels games over the last few years because I really enjoy watching Ohtani play. And so I've seen that. But like I said, I haven't seen it in Dodger blue. So I'm excited for that. I've never seen Yamamoto. I guess I probably saw him in the World Baseball Classic, but I wasn't really paying attention to Team Japan. And so I didn't really pay attention to who he was. So I've just seen videos, from the side view of him throwing live BP and stuff. So I'm really excited to see his stuff from the center field camera angle and see what he has. Again, not going to get my hopes too high or low based on how the results go, but just seeing him out there. Whenever you sign a huge free agent, it's exciting to see them take the field. I remember when Freddie Freeman took the field as a Dodger the first time, how exciting that was. Mookie Betts, which was a little bit weird because, the spring training ended up getting interrupted and delayed and everything because of COVID that year. But it's always exciting when a big free agent takes the field for the first time, and we get to see that twice this year with both Ohtani. This week with both Ohtani and Yamamoto. So very, very excited for both of those. I'm interested to know what you, the listener, are most excited for about these. If you're looking forward to these two as much as I am, if there's other players you're looking forward to, Tyler Glasnow was one that we were all looking forward to, and maybe we're looking forward to Glasnow's second appearance just to see, if it goes a little bit better. I assume for a lot of Dodger fans, it is Ohtani and Yamamoto. But if there's other people you're looking forward to or that you've been excited to see so far who've already played, let me know. If you're watching on YouTube, love to hear from you in the comments section. If you're listening on the podcast, love to hear from you through social media or email or whatever. All the contact info I'll give you at the end. But, I'm really interested to know who everybody's excited about, because spring training is something different for everybody. The experience, and some people get tired of it quickly. And for me, hey, baseball's on again. And it is kind of nice that the games don't matter. And so I don't have to live and die by it. And you guys, if you're an everydayer, I try not to live and die by every game during the regular season even because the season is so long. I don't have that kind of emotional energy to expend. I save that emotional energy for October. But so spring training is nice that I can I can be even less invested, and I can just enjoy the good things. Watching James Outman homer off a lefty on Sunday was a lot of fun because Outman, as we've talked about, he hit lefties okay last year, but didn't show any power. Only hit one homer off a lefty all year. And this home run was a classic James Outman home run swing. It was a beautiful swing. And I've made the point. His strikeout rate was about the same against lefties as against righties last year. So I do believe he's going to hit lefties well. Well, hitting a home run is a good first step. And Sunday, Max Muncy also hit a 2-run homer off of a lefty. Muncy didn't hit lefties well last year, but he has in the past. And so this was a hanging curveball. We'll see how it goes, but those are two guys who I'm really excited to see how they do against lefties this year, because that will go a long way toward how do the Dodgers overall do against lefties, because they do have kind of a lefty heavy lineup. Those two guys are probably going to be in the lineup most days against left-handed pitching and right-handed pitching. We know Freddie Freeman can hit lefties really well. Gavin Lux is kind of the third guy who's like, okay, how is he going to hit the lefties? Because then, that's kind of your, let's see, Freeman, Lux, Muncy, Outman. Yeah, I think that'll be the 4 lefties in the lineup against left. Oh, and Ohtani, obviously. Ohtani hits lefties well. So 5 lefties in the lineup against left-handed pitching, 6 lefties in the lineup against right-handed pitching. But the left-on-left stuff is something I'm excited to see this spring. And so seeing both of those, it's like there's just little things. So tell me the little things you're looking forward to that you're watching for this spring, like, these debuts or the lefty-lefty matchups, any of those things. I'd love to hear it. I'm going to come back in a minute and going to kind of get off the spring training topic, because Clayton Kershaw had some interesting comments this weekend, and you guys know how I love me some Clayton Kershaw, so I'm going to talk about that. So thank you again for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning, and please continue to keep it Locked On Dodgers. This episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more, whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Hey, I'm back. I want to thank you again for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning, especially our everydayers. Please become an everydayer by watching and listening every weekday morning. Remember to become a Locked On Dodgers insider by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. Just a couple bucks a month, free 14-day trial, and it's really, really fun texting back and forth with all of you. And be sure to check out Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles, the 2 24/7 streaming channels on YouTube from the Locked On Podcast Network. And with that said, interesting comments from Clayton Kershaw this week. He was mic'd up on one of the ESPN broadcasts this weekend, and he said, I'm quoting, Blake Harris tweeted out the quote, I didn't watch the ESPN broadcasts. I don't subject myself to that. I watched on MLB TV, watched the Dodgers broadcast, which, I'd always rather watch a Dodgers broadcast, even when it's not Joe and Oral over an ESPN broadcast. But, if I had known Clayton Kershaw was going to be on, I might have switched over for that part. But he said, as long as I want to keep playing, my shoulder giving me a couple more years would be awesome. And that's really interesting to me, simply because there's been kind of the assumption that Kershaw wants to get to 3,000 strikeouts and then probably call it a career. And by saying, when I say there's been that assumption, that's been the assumption I've been making. I just have kind of felt like that's the one thing left, especially if the Dodgers were to win the World Series this year. If they won the World Series and he got to 3,000 strikeouts, I have guessed that he would walk away. But, it sounds like he might want to keep going. And he does, there's a little bit of a caveat on that. He says, as long as I want to keep playing, my shoulder giving me a couple more years would be awesome. There's one way to interpret that as he's just saying, I don't want my shoulder to be the reason I retire. I want to retire on my terms. And in that context, it's still perfectly reasonable that he could, if he gets 3,000 strikeouts and wins another World Series title, that he might say, I'm going out on my terms. I wasn't forced out of the game. I did everything I wanted to do. I won another World Series title. I got 3,000 strikeouts, and I'm going to go be a dad now. And so in that context, it doesn't really change the assumptions. But the other context is he's talking about playing a few more years. He signed a 2-year deal, a 1-year deal with the 1-year player option after that. But I mean, a few generally means even more than 2. I have an English degree. I have opinions on this. But a couple and a few can mean a lot of different things, but a few at least implies that he's not necessarily set on no later than 2025 am I pitching in Major League Baseball. If his shoulder, we used the phrase, we talked about it a couple of weeks ago, the phrase thrown out of Kershaw being as good as new. I mean, if his fastball is 93 this year and he feels good, why wouldn't he want to keep going? He could be back to being one of the best pitchers in the league if his fastball bounces back. We don't know, like we talked about, we don't know what as good as new means. If that means as good as last year before the shoulder injury, well, he didn't have a 93 mile an hour fastball last year. But if it means as good as 2015 before, the injuries really started piling up, hey, that would be awesome. So we'll just have to see what he looks like. But it was fascinating to me and a little bit exciting that he's talking about the possibility of multiple more years, because I am not ready for Clayton Kershaw to retire, especially. And that's the thing. Like, he's always had so much pride in his performance, and not in a bad way. Like, pride goes both ways. It can be a good thing. It can be a bad thing. But for Kershaw, he is driven to be his best. And that's the pride I'm talking about. And so he doesn't want, and he even said this a couple weeks ago, he doesn't want to be an average pitcher. He wants to be very good. And so I don't think he's going to stick around if he's not very good. Even if the shoulder's fine, if he's just kind of a mediocre pitcher, he'll probably call it a career. But if the shoulder's fine, it's hard to picture him being mediocre, because the slider and the curveball are both so good. If the fastball can hold up as his second or third pitch, the sky's the limit for Kershaw. He could pitch a few more years. I'd love it. The Dodgers win record. He's currently, what is he? We talked about this a couple weeks ago too, 20-ish behind Don Sutton for the Dodgers. Maybe it's 24 behind Don Sutton for the Dodgers wins career record. I mean, 3 more years, he could get that. There's so many things that are still on the horizon if he wants to keep playing. And it sounds like if his shoulder's healthy, he might want to keep playing. And we've also talked about the family side of things where, Callie would have just turned 9. So his oldest child is gonna, finishing up elementary school in the next couple of years, gonna be starting junior high in a few years. You kind of start thinking, okay, I don't want to miss some of these things about my kids growing up. But then he also has his youngest, I think Chase is his youngest, that isn't old enough yet to remember his dad playing baseball. And so maybe there's that motivation, and maybe the sweet spot is 3 or 4 years, where like around the time that Callie is ready to start high school, 4-ish years from now, then the youngest is old enough to at least have some memories of dad playing baseball. And maybe that's the sweet spot. And if the shoulder holds up, I'd love to see Kershaw for 4 more years if he's pitching well, especially because now we've kind of confirmed, I would think, that Kershaw's never going anywhere except the Dodgers. The fact that he referred to this offseason as the first time he's ever had to make a hard decision in his life. Well, he's been a free agent 2 times before and was theoretically considering going to the Rangers. If it wasn't a hard decision to come to the Dodgers instead of the Rangers, I don't think that's ever going to be a hard decision. And so I think he is a Dodger for life. And now that we know, what he said on ESPN, there's at least a chance that could be longer than we maybe previously expected. I'd love it. And again, like I said, there is a context where this doesn't change anything, because it could just mean I don't want my shoulder to be the reason I retire. And maybe he still does. As soon as he gets 3,000 strikeouts, he says, I'm done, especially if the Dodgers win another World Series. But a boy can dream, and Clayton Kershaw is my favorite player of all time. And I love everything about him. And there's not many things I like more in my baseball life than watching Clayton Kershaw pitch. So excited to do it later this year and hopefully for years to come. Fingers crossed. With that said, I think that's going to do it for me today. Like I said, so much going on in spring training. There's probably things that you had thoughts on that I didn't even bring up. I'd love to hear those things. Like I said, if you're watching on YouTube, put them in the comment section below. If you're listening on the podcast, love to hear from you through all the contact info I'll give you in just a second. But I really, really would love to hear your thoughts, because now that we're getting into real stuff, like in the regular season, there's going to be things that we're only doing 30 minutes a day. And so we can't touch on everything, but I'd love to hear your thoughts, and maybe there are things we'll touch on in the future. So love to hear that. Again, thank you if you're an everydayer. If you're not an everydayer, please become one by watching and listening every weekday morning. If you have friends or family who love the Dodgers, please tell them about the show. Maybe they'll like it. You can check out Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles, the two 24/7 streaming channels on from the Locked On Podcast Network on YouTube. You can also become a Locked On Dodgers insider by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. Very, very fun way to spend a couple bucks a month interacting via text message with Vince and me. And as the season gets going, there will be even more behind the scenes stuff as Vince is there down on the field before games and stuff, all that good stuff. So check that out, a free 14-day trial. Check it out. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Locked On Dodgers. Vince is on Twitter at VinceSense91. I'm on Twitter at Snydog. Our DMs are open there. You can also email us anytime you want, lockedondodgers@gmail.com, or send us a voicemail or a text message to 323-863-LOCK5625. We are here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be here with us. When you get in your car or sit on your couch, tell your smart device to play podcast Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. We'll talk to you tomorrow.